College football fans, we are back with another episode of Saturday Showdown. We just finished the first weekend of the college football playoffs, the first ever weekend of the 12-team bracket. And, after this first weekend of games, I think most of the outcomes, the home team won. Most of the teams that were favored in these games won their respective games, and all the higher seeded teams win. And this is the first year of this. Some people have already started talking about how this is a perfect example of showing why some teams don't belong, why 12 teams not going to work. But it's the first year. Give it a break. Give it a few years, and then if it doesn't work, I mean, you can't judge something off of just the first even round here. So, overall, though, a good weekend of very fun college football, seeing these matchups take place at, the home fields of the home teams. You're getting to see these college football playoff games on campuses at the respective schools. Some crazy environments, some fantastic environments, starting off with, you had the snowy environment in Indiana with Notre Dame, Indiana, all the way down to Austin, where they were the one game where no snow was predicted. You jump over to Penn State, where you have a whiteout at Happy Valley, which they're known for. You jump over to Ohio State, where a big home game there, where there was a chance of snow, but you didn't really get much there. But overall, a great weekend of college football. We'll just pop this scores up here really fast. Round one results, you had Notre Dame beating Indiana 27-17, Penn State beating SMU 38-10, Texas beating Clemson 38-24, and Ohio State finishing it off 42-17 over Tennessee. So, not a lot of surprises here. I think I went 500 for picks in this first weekend, picking Penn State and Texas to get the wins, and then Notre Dame and Ohio State beat Indiana and Tennessee, my other respective picks there. Aaron says, do you guys like the 12-team system from what you saw this weekend? I think that's a TBD, wait and see. I mean, I don't think you're going to get it 100% right year one. They're going to probably make some tweaks next year. Some thoughts I've seen thrown out there is just because maybe a team for sure wins the conference doesn't mean they get automatic buys. Look at Boise State. They won their conference, even though they were the respective group of five school. But Boise State might not have should have had a bye round one. And there's different things that you'll fix. What's your thoughts on that, Dylan?
I think this is the issue the 12-team playoff is always going to have. I don't think it's ever going to get fixed, right? If you win your respective, main conference, right? You deserve a spot. Boise State, all these guys deserve a spot. I think we can all mutually agree on that. Or at least most of us can. But the problem is like some of these teams just don't belong. They don't. And I hate to say that, right? But like obviously Boise State is to be decided, right? But they're already underdogs, right, to Penn State. This is a team that plays in the Mountain West that is now going to go up against a bigger, right, more than likely better type of school, and it's they play 10 times the competition that Boise State plays in a season. Right, this is Penn State we're talking about. They play the Ohio States, the Indianas. They played USC, they play the Michigans. They're in the same conference as as Oregon. Like, this is not a small time school. So this is what the problem is with this 12-team playoff is you're going to have these small schools like this go up against these bigger and better schools, or these schools that play twice the competition, twice the teams, right? That these guys will play on a regular basis, and you're going to have blowouts. I'm pretty sure I picked SMU to win just because I don't like Penn State and I wanted SMU to win big time. But like, I'm going to use them for an example. SMU's first year in the ACC. They played well, played great, right? They had a tough loss to Clemson. If they started the game off better, they probably blow Clemson out of the water, to be honest. But that's the ACC, and this is their first year in it, coming from an even lower division than that. And now they actually have to go up. They went up against a Big Ten team, someone who plays like some of the best competition in college football. I mean, I'm pretty sure I even said it could end up being a blowout. I didn't want to see it like that, but that's what it was. I mean, you got destroyed by 28 points. So I don't think anything is going to be able to fix that unless you just say, well, even if you win your conference, it doesn't mean you get a spot in. That's the only way I could see you fix that. And then at that point, how is that fair? Because then you're going to have a 3-loss team like Alabama sneak in. You're going to have that's going to be the problem. So as long as they keep it, if you win your conference, you'll get in. You're going to have the teams like that, right? Go up against teams that they're just not fit to play, and you're going to see these blowouts. It was a great weekend, in my opinion, for college football for the first week. But at the same time, it was also detrimental to the 12-team playoff because every game was a blowout. Even the Notre Dame game, even though it ended up only being a 10-point game, that was only because Indiana scored 2 touchdowns late in the game when nothing even mattered. Other than that, it was a complete blowout the entire game. So literally every game was an absolute blowout. So
yeah, I think it's one of those things where when you look at it, maybe, and I know they said it on game day and talked about it, is maybe you take into account, when you're doing your seedings and you're looking at setting these playoffs, strength of schedule a little bit more, because if you look at it, comparatively, maybe SMU's strength of schedule, even though they won the ACC, how good overall was their schedule compared to, maybe some teams that were right on the outside edge looking in, or comparatively to some of these other teams in the playoffs. So, there's different ways to go about it, and we'll just have to see what tweaks they make after this year going into next season. Our boy Gabe's back, says go Irish. Indeed, They got the win at home.
The only some other problems that I see with what you said is you start looking at strength of schedule, if you take that into account and you say Clemson doesn't get in, right? Even though they won the ACC, they don't get in. You're just, in my opinion, you're just opening up opportunities for teams like Alabama to get in, right? I think Alabama's probably the better team. Yes. I don't think a 3-loss team should be in. I don't think that's fair to anybody. If you win your respective conference, in my opinion, regardless of strength of schedule, I feel like you should get in. And at the same time, even if they work out the seedings, right, and you have a team like Boise State play a team like SMU, no offense, compared to the other games, that's not going to be a very watched game, right? I mean, so I don't know if there's really any way around this, to be honest. In my opinion, there's just so many issues because you're going to have teams play better teams, and these blowouts are just going to happen, right? I don't know the way around it. I don't know how, if there is, I don't know what they got to do to figure that out. But like I said, it was a good weekend, but at the same time, there was a lot of blowouts. So I think that kind of hurt the 12-team playoff, picture.
Right. Gabe says here they should value wins much more, in his opinion. Teams like Indiana and even Penn State who don't have good wins should not be given the benefit of the doubt. And he continues this here and says, I think there's way too much value on quote unquote good losses relative to wins.
Yeah, this is very true.
So different things to take into account as you're, kind of, like we said, this is the first year that, they're going to make tweaks going into next year kind of to see if they can improve this. And we'll just have to see what happens. But we'll jump in here to these first round games. We'll start with Friday night's game in snowy Indiana as Indiana went to Notre Dame. If anybody missed it on game day, Curt Cignetti had some pretty strong words, came out there and said that, pretty much they beat the crap out of top 25 teams, and, that's what they're going to continue to do. And Mr. Cignetti had to eat his words very much so in this game. And they talked about how it looked like he was coaching defeated towards the end of the game there. And like you said, we were talking before the show how, he tried to make it in the press conference, that they were, making a fight for it at the end there and things like that. But, they got those 2 late touchdowns in, what essentially was the game was already over. But final score 27-17, Notre Dame will move on to take on Georgia in the second round here. Looking at Indiana, Curtis Rourke, a guy that he struggled the first half, especially that first quarter. Really couldn't get anything going through there, was overthrowing receivers, wasn't very accurate. Finished his game 20 of 33 for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Ellison on the ground game shut down. Notre Dame took care of Indiana's rushing game. 37 yards was their leading rusher, and their leading receiver had 67 yards. So at the end of the day, Notre Dame came out, dominated this game. Riley Leonard, 201 yards to the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Love, 8 carries for 108 yards and 1 touchdown on the game. And then you had Faison, 7 receptions for 89 yards. I mean, Jeremiah Love just came in and averaged 13.5 yards per carry in this game. Then you had Jadarian Prince, 11 carries for 32 yards, and then Riley Leonard also had 11 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown as well.
Yeah, I mean, until those 2 garbage time touchdowns, until the fourth quarter, I mean, it was 20-3. So, I mean, Notre Dame dominated the whole game entirely. Indiana could not get a run game going to save their life. They could not just move the ball on the ground. Like you said, Rourke did not play good basically the entirety of the game. They went 4-12. Indiana went 4-12 on third down. So that's garbage as it is. And they punted 6 times. So that wasn't very good for them either. They only controlled the ball for 24 minutes, right? Notre Dame had the ball for over, 11 minutes more than what Indiana had. So Notre Dame controlled every aspect of this game. I mean, they went 7 of 13. They didn't have to go for it on 4th down at all, right? They only punted twice. They had the ball for 35 minutes, 43 seconds, and they had about 400 total yards of offense. So, I mean, Notre Dame, they played really well. They laid down the hammer. Their defense played fantastic, I felt like. I mean, it was 20-3 basically the entirety of the game until those 2 garbage time touchdowns, but it didn't really matter anyways. So Riley Leonard, I feel like, he didn't have a bad game. I feel like it could have been better. But he managed the game really well. And obviously, whenever you run the ball that well on the ground anyways, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So they basically just pounded the football on the ground, which I don't blame them. Why wouldn't you? If you find something that works early, why not just continue with it? And Indiana had no answer for it. They literally
and think about, what did we talk about last week? If you're Notre Dame, you watch that Ohio State film of what they did against Indiana, and clearly they did because, same game plan there. You shut the run down, force Rourke to try to beat you through the air. And if you look at this game, take away those 2 touchdowns because those came in the garbage time, his passing touchdowns. So he had 215 yards and an interception in this game without those 2 garbage time touchdowns. So he did not have a great game whatsoever.
No.
And like Gabe said here, defense won the game. So much fun to watch this team. Defense, like you said, behind the defense, shutting down Indiana's run game, and then like Dylan was just talking about, pounding the rock on the ground, forcing them, lining up, and basically saying, "This is what we're going to do. See if you can stop us." So
it was like Michigan. What they did to a lot of teams this year. Once they established the run game, they were just like, we're just going to keep doing this until you decide you can stop us. Indiana couldn't. And like you said, Notre Dame, they had to watch something that Ohio State did because their defense, I mean, Indiana had so much trouble moving the ball. It was unbearable. Like I said, until those last 2 touchdowns, this was a good old-fashioned – it was a whooping. That's what it was. So credit to Notre Dame for absolutely dominating every aspect of the game.
Yeah. Take here, Gabe says, if I'm an Indiana fan, I'd be super disappointed in Coach Sig in this game. Coach scared in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak much on the coaches. I would feel like you got to take more chances in a game like this. You should be laying everything on the line, especially when you came out with all that talk. On the college game day, you came on all that talk in front of everybody, saying you beat top 25 teams when you don't, because you didn't beat Ohio State, right? So you don't beat top 25 teams. You came out with all that talk. It didn't matter, right? And then you get in the game. You don't take the chances that I feel like that you probably should take, and you let Notre Dame establish something right off the rip in the game, and you didn't make them change their game script at all. They established the run, and they pounded the football. That's it. And you didn't force them to do anything different. So yeah, it wasn't the best coaching. And then afterwards, to say some stuff like it was a close game, we almost had it or whatever, you didn't. It was a 10-point game because of the 2 garbage time touchdowns when the game was already lost anyways. Up until that point, I mean, you're looking at a 27-3 game. So,
yeah,
you got whooped.
If you look at it too, yeah, you look at it. Indiana punted 6 times in this game, with 3 of those coming in the second half. At this point, when you're down, like you said, 20-3, I feel like you've got to start going for it on 4th down in situations instead of just punting it away. Because how else are you going to get back into the game if you're just going to give the ball right back to them, and they've already been able to run the ball well, so they're just going to continue to drain clock, and if they have to punt it back to you. So, I mean, if you look at it, maybe they weren't manageable.
And quit running the football. Start throwing the ball. I understand you scored 2 touchdowns when it didn't matter, but start taking chances. You gotta throw some deep pass. You have to do something, anything. You should be flipping through the whole playbook, trying to find one play that works, just one, so you can build off of that. But Indiana couldn't find anything.
I was about to say, if you look at it, I will excuse one of the punts in the second half, because if you look at it, it was a 4th and 19, which is fair to punt it in that situation. But some of these other ones, 4th and 8. That's completely doable. You've got to try to go for it there. And even on, one of the later ones, 4th and 11, that's still manageable. I can understand the 4th and 19. That's a little bit, you have to get essentially 20 yards there. But at the end of the day, you still got to, you got to play a little bit more aggressive. I mean, this is a playoff. You're out, you're done. So what do you got to lose if you turn it over anyway? So
exactly.
But at the end of the day, Notre Dame gets the win. They will move on to take on Georgia, and we'll briefly cover that game a little bit, but we'll dive in depth next week for those games. But I mean, what a crazy environment! You had the snow. You had people lined up since early in the morning for campus for this game. This is what I like so far about these college football playoff games. Now, round 2 does move to neutral site games, but this first round being at home produced some great environments in these games. Next, we'll jump over to the Penn State SMU game, the game that, I really thought it could be more competitive than what it was, but Penn State comes out here and gets the win 28-10. I mean, they were up 28-0 at halftime. And that was no thanks to interceptions thrown by SMU. So they just couldn't get out of their own way, essentially. 2 pick sixes in any game is going to be tough to overcome. And so you look at it, we'll just look at SMU side real quick. Kevin Jennings, 20 of 36, 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, with 2 of those being pick sixes. On the ground, Brashard Smith, 18 carries, 62 yards, and that was it on the ground. Leading receiver, 4 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown, which, that touchdown, like we just talked about, came late in the game. And, was one of those where, they scored to make it not 38-3, but at the end of the day, didn't really matter. Gabe said, turn this one off after the first quarter, which is fair. And then you flip over to Penn State side. Drew Aller came out in this game, 13 of 22, 127 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. This was a game where Penn State dominated on the ground. You had Nicholas Singleton, 14 carries, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Katron Allen, 11 carries for 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, and then you had Penn State come out with freshman quarterback, and he threw a touchdown. Ethan Brunkmeyer, 1 of 2 for 9 yards and a touchdown, or an interception in this one. Excuse me. So at the end of the day, it was another one of those games that was dominated on the ground. You know, not much passing going on here for Penn State. You know, Drew Aller, 127 yards, but that was about it. Another game where defense kind of dominated here. You know, 2 pick sixes by Penn State. Shut down everything that SMU was trying to do. So kind of same story, different teams. Like we talked about with Notre Dame, Indiana, same thing here with Penn State, SMU.
Yeah, I mean, the momentum was definitely not in SMU's favor from the get-go. I mean, you know, you said it was dominated on the ground, which it was, but it was also 50-50 dominated with defense. I mean, to start off the game, basically, you know, with 6 minutes left in the first quarter, 23-yard, pick six return. You know, so 7-0, you know, with 6 minutes left in the first quarter instantly. To start the second quarter, a 59-yard interception return for a touchdown. Back-to-back pick sixes, 14-0, right? And then with 5 minutes to go, you allow a rushing touchdown by Allen. And then with 1 minute left, you allow Penn State. In 4 minutes, you allowed them to get the ball back, drive all the way up the field, and score another rushing touchdown by Singleton. So, you know, two back-to-back pick sixes, that's just not how you win games. I mean, it was basically over for SMU from that point on. I mean, all the momentum was literally from the beginning of the game. You gave it to Penn State, and then you created no sort of plays or situations to get that momentum back. That swing was in full swing for Penn State from the get-go, and they knew it after that first pick six. They knew it, and Penn State did not let go of it at all. And, you know, if you take away that second quarter, right, you take away the pick six, you take away the whole second quarter, it's 17-10. It's a 17-10 game because Allar did not have a great game. I mean, he did not, which is very underwhelming to see, especially, moving on. Thank God, for these guys, they're playing Boise State. Not saying they can't lose, but thank God for him because, if you were to play a Georgia or an Ohio State or a Notre Dame or someone who potentially has, a bigger team potentially, to come off a game where you only threw for 127 yards, that's not very helpful to see. And it was dominated on the ground, but, you want to see something more than that. You want to see, you don't want to see just a single-sided offense. So thank God Penn State's defense came to play. But it was utter domination. Like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They ran it on the ground. Didn't have to change, their ways whatsoever. And the defense putting up 14 points is huge. This is one of those issues, right? I thought SMU was going to put up a bigger fight, but this is one of those issues that arises in a 12-team playoff. Like people have already said, some teams like that don't deserve to get in because, they got to play teams like this. And even though I did pick SMU to win, I did say the one thing Penn State has going for them is SMU has not played a Big Ten team. They have not played someone who has played some of the best. So Penn State showed SMU why the ACC and the Big Ten are so different. So credit to Penn State for absolutely blowing SMU out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, it's like you one stat that you like to talk about all season, turnover margin, 3-1, SMU, 3 turnovers. You look at the efficiency. SMU was 3 of 14 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down, whereas you have Penn State converting 50% of the time, going 6 of 13 on their third downs. So at the end of the day, dominant defensive game by Penn State, got their run game going. But I think to continue to move forward, I feel like they probably did get one of the easier paths to make it.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get through Boise State, but Drew Aller's going to have to play much better, if they get past that and going forward. Jump over to another game that seemingly looked closer, but in the end, it wasn't really closer, and this is kind of what we expected out of this game. Texas beats Clemson 38-24 in a game where, once again, was dominated on the ground, and I'm saying that with emphasis because you had two different running backs for Texas rush for over 100 yards apiece. So, absolute just, we're going to put it on the ground, and you're going to have to stop us if you want a chance. You look at this game, Klubnik played well for Clemson, 336 yards to the air, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. On the ground, that's where they struggled. Maffa in this game, Clemson's main running back here, 2 carries, 9 yards. He's banged up, shoulder injury. He'd been injured for most of the season and kind of was playing through some things. Cade Klubnik, as far as in terms of carries, was their leading rusher with 13. Their next highest guy, 4 carries for 44 yards.
Yeah.
No rushing game whatsoever here. And then you flip to Texas. Quinn Ewers, average the game, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. We kind of talked about this, where which Quinn Ewers you're going to get. And I'm not sure if this was just because they were having much success on the ground, but I mean, it seemed like just an average day from Quinn Ewers. But then you turn to the ground game of Texas. Jaden Blue, 14 carries, 146 yards, averaging 10.4 yards a carry and scoring 2 touchdowns. And then Quintravion Wisner, 15 carries, 110 yards, 7.3 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns as well. So just utter dominance on the ground by this Texas team. And if you look at it too, you flip over there, turnovers was equal, turnover margin 1. Each team had a turnover. So at the end of the day, Clemson did shoot themselves in the foot a little bit. They had 5 penalties for 65 yards. Texas had 2 for 10 yards. Another game where you can tell as far as up and down who the better team was. It seemed like from the start of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that this game was going to get out of hand. We had talked about it. We had both said it was probably going to be like a 2-touchdown game, which it was. It honestly could have been worse if Texas, if they wouldn't have had some mistakes and wouldn't have pushed the issue, would have pushed the issue a little more. Because there was a point in time where they were just running the ball. I mean, I guess they did it all again, but they were just running the ball like willingly, like without. It almost seemed like Clemson could do nothing. Like they could have loaded the box, they could have did whatever they wanted, and it did not matter. Texas was literally just pounding the rock, straight up the middle. If you want to win, stop me. I think that was probably their game plan coming in. Quinn Ewers, it is a little sad to see. He plays well against like the bad teams, but like some of the good teams, like he just underperforms a little bit. I don't know if he's still kind of not 100% from his injury, his abdominal injury he had a handful of weeks ago or what. But hopefully, he can play big when they need him to. They also have a pretty easy path as well. I mean, playing Clemson, no offense to Arizona State. If there is any Arizona State fans in here, that game's probably not going to be pretty. We'll talk about it next week, but I promise you that game's probably going to end up the same situation. So Texas has a pretty easy path. So it was good for, maybe Quinn is still a little banged up, and they said, we're going to run the football. If it works, we're just going to keep pounding the football, maybe give him a little bit of a break. Maybe that was the whole idea, right? But yeah, Clemson stood no chance, right? I mean, they punted the ball 4 times. They turned the ball over twice on fourth down. They went 1 of 3 on fourth down. The efficiency was not there. Clay Klubnik, he played well, but I mean, Texas's defense is elite. Their offense is obviously elite. Again, right? We're seeing a lower team in a lower conference of the ACC go up against a bigger team like a Big Ten team, or in this case, an SEC team, and it just does. I mean, you're not the same level as team, right? You don't play the same level as competition. You don't get the same level as players. You guys are just two different tiers, right? This is like B tier, and this is like A tier. And whenever you move up, like you better be ready to like start playing with the big dogs. You got to. I mean, you have to bring everything. You can't. It's 28-10 at halftime. I mean, that game is over. That's it. You're not coming back from that. That's not happening, right? You're not winning that game. So you want to play with the big dogs. You want to move up a level and start playing with some of these Big Ten SEC teams. Like, you better get off to the right start, because going down 28-10 at halftime, being down 18 points against a team like Texas, it's unwinnable at that point in time. You're just not winning the football game. So
right.
Again, credit to Texas, because that was just an utter domination. So what should we do?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it too, Clemson was able to score on their first drive of the game, go up 7-0 early. Good for them. But then you look at it, Clemson doesn't score again until a minute and a half left in the second quarter.
Yeah,
with a field goal.
Yeah. And then they don't score again until 3 minutes and 29 seconds in the third quarter.
And in between that, Texas puts up 24 points. So, yeah.
And it's 24-31, right? And what do? You just allow Texas to do what they do and run all over you, and let Blue run for a 77-yard touchdown run to just put the game out of hand, right? Like, Texas had some issues, couldn't move the ball for a little bit. They gave you plenty of opportunity to try to catch back up in this one, and you got within a touchdown, right? They were literally dangling out in front of you, right? Like the old Peyton Manning commercial, where he's got the dollar on the fishing pole. He said, "Oh, we gotta be quicker than that." They kept it out there for you guys, and then you guys just let it go. So again, like I said, you got a lower tier team moving up to the big dogs. You can't just play good for one portion of a game. You have to play well the entire game. So,
yeah. I mean, we're seeing a trend here, and I mean, that's what we talked about kind of in the beginning, talking about the 12-team playoff. But, so far, these first 3 games we've talked about, it's been kind of same story, same situations and same trends in all 3 games. All 3 games were heavily dominated by defense and a lot of the ground game. Between all 3 teams that won were kind of just dominant there, and was able to establish that, and just, like we've said, line up and show us you can stop us. And then, they couldn't. So that's what happened. So, Texas, like Dillon mentioned earlier, will move on to play Arizona State in the second round, and we'll see what happens there. And to jump over to what I thought was going to be one of the better games of the night and more competitive games, even though it wasn't turned out, Dillon's just waiting here to talk about this game. Ohio State gets the win over Tennessee, 42-17 at Ohio State. Tennessee just came out and struggled in this one. I mean, that's all it was. Nico, only 14 of 31 for 104 yards. They could not get their passing game going whatsoever. Dylan Sampson, 2 carries for 6 yards. If I remember, he got hurt in this game, correct?
He was still able to play, but they thought he got hurt. But I believe that he wasn't fully.
Well, he finished the game with a total of 9 yards. He had 2 carries for 6 yards, or 8, and then 1 reception for 2 yards. So when you have your guy that kind of was a big part of this offense all season long, he gets, shut down to 8 yards, that's not going to go well. Your leading rusher had 77 yards. Peyton Lewis on the receiving side, Brew McCoy, 4 catches for 40 yards. 1 fumble by Nico to turn over the ball there. And, I mean, just, like we've talked about with these other 3, dominance here by Ohio State. You had Will Howard come out here, throw 24 of 29, only missed 5 throws in this game, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. On the ground, Travion Henderson, 10 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Quinshon Judkins, 10 carries, 34 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. So another game where it was the running game, but also you had Will Howard, throwing the ball to standout wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. So, I mean, this was a dominant game in all facets of the game. Defense, running the ball, throwing the ball. Take it away, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just saying this is why Ohio State is the best team in college football right now. I'm just saying, right? We have the best defense. We really do have the best defense in college football, allowing 240 yards a game, 100% shutout, right? I thought there might have been some issues, especially if we played like we did against Michigan, right? Tennessee had the type of offense. They're fast. They got weapons, right? If we come out and don't play well, I mean, I was worried that was going to be that could be an issue if we didn't start off right on defense, especially with the firepower that they have, that they could come out and get off quick and just start putting out of the way like every other game that happened previous, right? Every team got out to a hot start, and I was just hoping and praying that was not going to be the issue. And let me tell you, it was not. That was not it, right? Dylan Sampson, right? He is the 4th leading rusher in all of college football, and he's the leading rusher in the SEC, and we completely just annihilated whatever game plan that he had going for himself. We basically just took him like he wasn't even in the game. Just, you're done playing football. Nico, 14 of 31 for 104 yards, right? I'm not going to say he's an elite quarterback, but he's one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Basically like he wasn't even there, right? You might as well had anyone else trying to throw the football because it just was not working. Our defense was just grade A. Stop the run, stop the pass, no matter what happened. And I don't know about you, but I did not have it wrote up on a little note sheet, right, that Will Howard was going to go against Tennessee's defense and throw for over 300 yards. Did not see that one coming, right? Did not see that coming.
Yeah.
So 311 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception for Will Howard, 24-29. Didn't see that happening. Only 5 incompletions. Played great. And then, again, the double-headed, monster between Judkins and Henderson. It seems like they take turns. It's almost like every other week. There's still not a predominant back. I always thought maybe Judkins was going to be the lead guy, somewhere in the beginning of the season. It kind of seemed like maybe he was kind of straying away a little bit, away from Henderson. But they split carries evenly. Henderson, he was on fire. He was hurdling everybody, breaking tackles, doing whatever. So he played really well. Like you said, 10 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Judkins had his 2 touchdowns. Smith played a great game. Of course, I mean, obviously, he's going to be, whenever he decides to go to the draft, he'll be a top pick for wide receiver. The kid's great. But, yeah, I mean, we did everything really well this game. So I was happy that we were able to come in and dominate. I did not think that was going to be the case. Tennessee's a really good football team. I said it a million times last week. I was so worried that we were going to beat ourselves again, like the Oregon game. We just we had opportunities to win the football game, and we didn't, and then we end up losing. I was also worried that maybe suffering the Michigan loss again, we were going to kind of be at a little bit of a loss for words, and I was, maybe thinking that was going to be lingering a little bit. And like I said, Tennessee's a football team that can come in and just hammer it down quick. But that was not the case. Our defense set our offense up for everything. So our defense literally just did not let these guys. They didn't let them do anything. Tennessee couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't do anything. So I was very happy with the performance. It couldn't have came at a better time, especially when we got to have a rematch against Oregon. I'm glad that this was an absolute domination. I feel like we're going to have more confidence, more momentum going into that Oregon game. So overall, great performance. I was worried before the game started, but I'm happy with what Ohio State did. So
Yeah, if you look at it, complete opposites here. You had Ohio State, their first 3 possessions of the game, back to back to back touchdowns. Flip side of that, Tennessee, their first 3 possessions of the game, all punts. It took them until their 4th possession of the game to even get a field goal in the second quarter so that they could tie it up before, or not tied up, but get within, kind of, if you want to say striking distance. But yeah, like you said, it was just everything seemed to be clicking and going right for Ohio State, and everything that could go wrong for Tennessee seemed to go that way. Not to mention, the insane cold. I saw where they were talking about part of it. Nico's helmet literally cracked and chipped.
yeah,
It was so cold. So
that helped a lot of the that had to have some part of a play and winning for some of these teams, that are used to playing in the cold, like the extreme cold, right? Not just like 40-degree weather. I'm talking like 10-degree weather. That had to be a factor for some of these guys. When you're just not used to playing in it, you're just not used to playing in it. Even guys who play in that cold weather, it's still hard to get used to.
Yeah, because you got to think that ball's hard as a rock. Those shots are going to sting a little bit more with it being cold, and all those things that factor into it. But at the end of the day, Ohio State comes out, gets the big win, and earns their rematch with Oregon next week, which should be a very fun game to watch. Neutral site in Pasadena. Probably one of my games that I'm going to have to, out of all of these, prioritize to watch, because it's going to be a good one. And we'll kind of just quickly look at those, not dive too much in depth to those. First game you're going to have is Penn State and Boise in the Fiesta Bowl, down in Glendale, Arizona at State Farm Stadium, where the Cardinals play. As of right now, coming to this game, even since we kind of talked about it a little bit, Penn State favored by 11 in this game. Not surprised there with the results from week 1. And probably the consideration that Boise State is Mountain West team, and how can they, after what Penn State just did SMU, Boise State's coming in. And I think for Boise State, they're going to have to find a way to hopefully get Ashton Jeanty doing what he's done all season to have a shot in this game.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I know we don't want to get into it too much because that's what we're going to talk about next week, but I think the big question, right, that everyone should be anticipating for next week's match is can Boise State have Jeanty run the ball? Is he going to be able to run the ball against Penn State's defense, who has looked really good basically all season long? I know I know he ran really well against Oregon, right? But that was one game against a Big Ten team. So is he going to be able to do that again, right? I think that's what everybody's issue is, because if they can't run the ball, I don't know what kind of other offensive, willpower that they're going to have. So,
yeah. Your next matchup on New Year's Day at noon, getting things kicked off. Texas will be playing Arizona State, where they head back to Mercedes-Benz, where they played a few weeks ago against Georgia in the SEC championship game. Texas comes in this game 12.5-point favorite. No surprise there. I think this may be similar to what we talked about with Clemson. I'm glad to see Arizona State had the successful season made it here, but their team, they won the Big 12, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to be able to stack up with Texas in this game.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said earlier, I think Texas probably has one of the easiest routes. No offense to Arizona State and Scatabo, I think is his name, Cam Scatabo. I know he feels like he's the best running back in college football, but I'm gonna say that's probably gonna be soon shot down when you play Texas's defense. So I'm gonna say that this one's probably gonna end up the same way as the previous game just ended. So
yeah. You jump over to your Buckeyes at 4:00, taking on the rematch with Oregon in Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. 1 point spread or favored Ohio State. So, like you said, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Oregon has sat a week. They came off of a game where they didn't look their best against Penn State. They won, but it wasn't what people thought would happen in that game. It was a lot closer than what a lot of people thought. You sit for a week. Ohio State's coming off of a big win where, their confidence, they're feeling good after beating Tennessee. And, I mean, this should be another great game, just like we had in the first one. Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, this high-flying Ducks team versus – like you were talking about, the two-headed monster between Judkins and Travion Henderson. As long as Will Howard can take care of the ball, get things done, and smart decisions, I think we should be in store for another great game.
Yeah, I would say this is probably gonna be the best matchup, or if not one of the best, right? I think it's gonna go a different route. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but if I would just say, no matter what happens, if we can get the same game as last time, I mean, it's going to be another great game to watch. So, I mean, I was on the edge of my seat last time they played because it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, it's going to be another great game to watch. So,
yeah. And then wrapping things up on New Year's night, you have Notre Dame taking on Georgia in the Caesars Superdome down in the All-State Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame favored by 1.5 in this game. That is one thing to note. No Carson Beck for Georgia. It was announced today by the university that he did have surgery on his UCL, had that repaired today, and should be set to return to throwing in the spring as spring ball rolls around. So, big shoes to fill for Gunnar Stockton to come in. This is his team now for the rest of the playoffs. And can he get the job done, having a few weeks to prepare here after that Texas game? And Notre Dame coming off a nice win at home over Indiana. I think, like you said, this could have a chance to be an interesting game because no Carson Beck. Georgia's played with a chip on their shoulder all season with, they look great at times. At times they struggle and don't look like the normal Georgia that we see. So can their defense show up? Does Notre Dame's defense show up again? I'm excited to watch this matchup as well.
Yeah, a lot of things taken to account here. I mean, obviously, listen, you're a backup for one of the biggest SEC teams, right? And, one of the biggest teams in college football. So that backup quarterback position, you're not as good as a starter, but I mean, you're probably a 5-star quarterback. At some point in time, you were a top prospect somewhere. So, I think he'll be fit to run everything. But the problem is that Notre Dame played really well. I know it was only against Indiana, but they played really well. And they're going to come in and they're facing a quarterback who's taken over, hasn't had the opportunity to play all season, basically, right? He's got to get some things done. I think it's going to be a very defensive battle. Notre Dame and Riley Leonard have to go up against an SEC top dog type of defense in Georgia. At the same time, Notre Dame's defense ain't no joke either. And now you have a quarterback who's got some big shoes to fill in the biggest probably moment of his whole college football career. Now he's got to step in and try to lead this Georgia team to a national championship, right? And he's got to do it against a tough Notre Dame team. So this is gonna be a really good game to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It should be another good weekend. Maybe a little bit more competitive than what we saw that first weekend, especially if you look at Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oregon. The other two games have the chance to look like last week's games with Penn State, Boise State, and then Texas, Arizona State. So it should be another good weekend of college football to watch. And to get you through to those games, you've got all the bowl games going on right now. Between, some of your smaller bowls are going on, and then we're slowly getting closer to those bigger bowl matchups that are non-college football bowls. You had a few going on today before we get out of here. And then, tomorrow you got the Hawaii Bowl, South Florida, San Jose State. Day after Christmas on the 26th, you've got the Game Above Sports Bowl, Pittsburgh and Toledo, the Rate Bowl, Rutgers, Kansas State, the Ventures Bowl, Arkansas State Bowling Green. Friday, my Razorbacks will be playing in the Liberty Bowl versus Texas Tech. You got Oklahoma playing Navy in the Armed Forces Bowl, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt playing in the Birmingham Bowl, Syracuse, Washington State playing in the DirecTV Holiday Bowl, and then wrapping things up that night is USC and Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. So, some good, interesting bowl games to watch in between these games and things like that. So, can't wait to see what happens this next weekend of the college football playoffs. And we'll be back here next week to kind of break down those games more in depth and kind of give you guys our picks. And, let you know what we think is going to happen. So it should be another good weekend of bowl games this weekend and then throughout the week. And then we'll be right back here next Monday to break down those second round playoff matchups in neutral site locations in these bowl games. So until next Monday, enjoy another week of, bowl games in college football, and have, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, spend time with your family. Enjoy all that, and we'll see you guys next week.